Welcome to Revenue's presentation on the Form 11. In this video, we will show you how to complete the income tax self-assessment screen. You must complete this before you can sign and submit the Form 11. By completing this screen, you are making your self-assessment to income tax. Help text is provided on the completion of this panel. This is available by clicking on the Form Help icon. This will take you step by step through each field, explaining what is required. In the self-assessment panel, there are two columns, A and B. When you open the self-assessment screen, column A will be completed with Revenue's indicative calculation of your liability based on the information you have entered in the form. You can see this full calculation by selecting the Calculate tab from the menu on the left of the screen. Column A is an extract of certain fields from this calculation. The figure in the self-assessment screen at A, amount of income or profits arising for this period, highlighted in red, is the total income amount in the Calculate screen. The figure in the self-assessment screen for amount of income tax chargeable for this period, highlighted in blue, is also taken from the Calculate screen. To make your self-assessment, you complete column B and make the declaration by ticking the declaration box. Before you make this declaration, you must state whether you agree or disagree with Revenue's calculation. Where you agree with Revenue's calculation, you tick Yes and click Transfer Values to Self-Assessment column. When you click on this Transfer button, column B will be filled with the values from column A. Note that the amount of tax paid directly to the Collector General will not transfer over. You must enter this amount in column B, which is the preliminary tax you paid in October 2018, plus any additional payments you may have made for the year 2018. If you attempt to either move out of this screen or sign and submit the Form 11, you will be presented with error messages as shown. Note that you are only agreeing to Revenue's calculation as far as C2, amount of tax overpaid for this period, before refund or offset at C3 below. Do not state you are disagreeing with Revenue's calculation if the difference between column A and column B arises after line C2. For example, if the amount of tax already paid to the Collector General shown in column A is less than the actual amount that has been paid. This could happen because you did not open a pre-populated Form 11 or payments have been made after the date a pre-populated form was obtained. After you have ticked the Transfer Values to Self-Assessment column button and entered the amount of tax paid, if any, you make the self-assessment by ticking the declaration as indicated. Your self-assessment has now been made and you can sign and submit the Form 11. If you are not agreeing with Revenue's calculation, you tick the No button. You must also give a reason why you do not agree with Revenue's calculation. Remember, do not indicate that you disagree with Revenue's calculation if the difference between Revenue's figures and what you think is correct arises after line C2. To make your self-assessment, you enter your own figures in column B. You must then tick the Self-Assessment Declaration button. If you attempt to either navigate out of this screen or sign and submit the Form 11 and the self-assessment section has not been fully completed, you will be presented with one or more error messages. An explanation of the error will also appear beside the box that is incorrect. The figures in column B must balance. If the amounts entered do not add up, you will receive an error message. If you amend any of the figures in column B after you have transferred the values into that column, you must make any corresponding adjustment to the subsequent values. In the example shown, preliminary tax of €4,000 was not reflected in column A. As it is important to include preliminary tax in your self-assessment, it must be entered in column B. However, in this example, the balance of tax payable figure was not reduced by €4,000. To correct this error, the balance of tax payable for this period should be amended to €324.59. If you indicate that you do not agree with revenues calculation, but the figures in columns A and B agree to line C2, you will not be able to either save or submit the Form 11. You will be directed back to the self-assessment panel. You must return to the self-assessment panel and correct the error. In the example shown, the values at line C1 agree. The difference between the columns arises further down at line H. In this situation, you should indicate that you agree with revenues figures. Note, however, that you should still include the preliminary tax payment of €4,000. If you indicate that you agree with revenues calculation, but the figures in columns A and B do not agree to line C2, you will not be able to either save or submit the Form 11. You will be directed back to the self-assessment panel. This situation can easily arise where you make a change to one of the other panels in the return after you have completed the self-assessment panel, perhaps when revisiting the form after saving it on an earlier occasion, but have not updated the self-assessment panel. You must revisit the self-assessment panel, and if you are still in agreement with revenues figures, hit the Transfer Values to Self-Assessment column again. This will update column B. You will now be able to save and/or submit the Form 11. Note, however, that you will have to re-enter the amount of tax paid direct to the Collector General. You must complete the self-assessment panel. You cannot submit a Form 11 without making your self-assessment. If using the Ross offline Form 11, you must complete this panel before you save the form, even if the form is only partially completed. It is important to update the self-assessment each time you visit the form to ensure that the self-assessment is correct when the final version is saved and submitted to Revenue. To check preliminary tax payments made, go to the Revenue Record tab and select the Payments option on the left-hand side of this screen.